Ethan Carter moved cautiously through the dense forest, his boots crunching softly on the thick layer of moss that covered the ground. The air was humid and carried a faint metallic tang, unlike anything he had ever smelled back on Earth. He adjusted the strap of his sample bag, glancing around at the towering alien trees with their glowing veins of bioluminescent sap. This planet was strange but beautiful, a scientist's dream come true. Every step revealed something new. Plants that pulsed like heartbeats, insects with crystalline wings, and flowers that shimmered in colors no human eye could fully comprehend. Today, Ethan's focus was on a particular flower he had spotted earlier from a distance. It was small, no bigger than his palm, but its petals radiated a soft blue light that seemed almost magical. He knelt down beside it, careful not to disturb the delicate stem. His gloved fingers brushed against the soil as he examined the plant closely. It wasn't just pretty. It might hold properties useful for medicine or energy production. That thought alone made his pulse quicken with excitement. But before he could pluck the flower, a sound pierced the stillness, a sharp whistle slicing through the air. Instinctively, Ethan turned his head just in time to see a spear hurtling straight toward him. Time slowed. His mind screamed at him to move, but his body reacted even faster. Without thinking, he reached out and caught the spear mid-flight, gripping it tightly with both hands. His breath hitched as he stared at the weapon in disbelief. How had he done that? Then he saw her. Standing a few yards away was a figure unlike any he had ever encountered. She was tall, taller than most humans, with skin that shimmered faintly under the dim light filtering through the canopy above. Her hair was long and silvery, cascading over her shoulders like liquid moonlight. She wore armor made of some kind of polished black material, intricately carved with symbols that seemed to glow faintly. In one hand, she held another spear, ready to throw if needed. Her golden eyes locked onto Ethan's, sharp and unyielding. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process what was happening. Was she hostile? Had he accidentally trespassed on sacred ground? Slowly, he raised his free hand in a gesture of peace, hoping she would understand. "I mean no harm," he said, though he doubted she spoke English. The woman tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made him feel exposed. Then she spoke, her voice low and melodic, though the words were foreign. When Ethan didn't respond, she pointed at the spear in his hand and said something else, firmer this time. Ethan frowned, unsure of what she wanted. He glanced at the spear, then back at her. "Ike caught it," he offered lamely, as if explaining himself would help. To his surprise, the woman stepped closer, her expression unreadable. She gestured again, pointing at the spear and then at herself. Ethan shook his head, confused. What did she want him to do? Return the spear. Keep it. Before he could decide, she began speaking rapidly, her tone firm and commanding. Though he couldn't understand her words, her meaning soon became clear. Catching the spear hadn't been an accident. It was significant. Very significant. And now, according to some ancient rule or tradition, Ethan had unknowingly bound himself to her. Whatever that meant, it was serious enough to make her lower her second spear and approach him cautiously. Ethan swallowed hard, gripping the spear tightly as he looked at the alien warrior standing before him. Something told him this encounter was about to change everything. Kayla Voss watched the human carefully, her golden eyes scanning every movement he made. He was clearly confused, gripping the spear like it might bite him if he let go. She could see the uncertainty in his face, the way his brow furrowed as he tried to piece together what had just happened. It amused her slightly, though she kept her expression stern. Humans were strange creatures, fragile-looking, yet capable of surprising feats. This one had proven that when he caught her spear. She stepped closer, pointing at the spear again, and then tapping her chest. "You catch, you take," she said slowly, using simple words she hoped he would understand. Her people's language was far too complex for him to grasp, so she had to make do with this clumsy attempt at communication. When he still looked puzzled, she sighed and pointed at herself. "Kayla," she said firmly. The man blinked, tilting his head slightly. "Ethan," he replied after a moment, pointing to himself. His voice was calm, though there was an edge of nervousness beneath it. Kayla nodded once. At least they had names now. That was something. "Ethan," she repeated, testing the sound of it. Then she gestured between them, mimicking the motion of throwing a spear and catching it. "You catch, by law. Mine." She tapped her chest again, trying to convey the weight of what had occurred. On her world, such an act was sacred, a bond formed by fate itself. Whether Ethan understood or not, the ancient laws were clear. He had claimed her loyalty, and she could not ignore that. Ethereal silence hung between them as Ethan processed her words, or at least tried to. Finally, he shook his head, holding up the spear awkwardly. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to." He trailed off, frustration creeping into his tone. Kayla crossed her arms, unimpressed by his protests. Intentions didn't matter here, only actions did. "You catch," she repeated firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Law is law." Ethan opened his mouth to argue further but stopped himself. Instead, he glanced around, as if searching for some kind of escape from this bizarre situation. But there was none. The forest stretched endlessly in all directions, and Kayla stood before him like an immovable force. After a long pause, he sighed deeply, running a hand through his short hair. "Okay," he muttered. "Fine. Let's say you're right about this. Law. What happens now?" Kayla relaxed slightly, sensing that he was beginning to accept the reality of their circumstances. She motioned for him to follow her, turning toward the direction of his camp. "We go. Talk more." She pointed at him, then at herself. "Together." Ethan hesitated, glancing back at the glowing flower he had been examining earlier. Reluctantly, he grabbed his sample bag and slung it over his shoulder before following her. As they walked, Kayla studied him out of the corner of her eye. He moved cautiously, his steps deliberate, as if afraid of disturbing the environment around him. It was different from how her people traveled, swift and efficient, leaving little trace. Yet there was something admirable about his care, even if it slowed them down. The journey to his camp wasn't long, but it gave Kayla time to think. She had heard stories of humans before, outsiders who came to their world seeking resources and knowledge. Most of her people distrusted them, viewing them as invaders. But this human, he seemed different. There was no malice in his actions, only curiosity. And while she didn't fully trust him yet, she couldn't deny the flicker of intrigue she felt. When they reached the edge of the human settlement, Kayla paused, taking in the sight of the makeshift structures and equipment scattered across the clearing. Several humans noticed them immediately, their expressions shifting from surprise to suspicion as they spotted her. One man, taller and broader than Ethan, approached cautiously, his hand resting on the weapon strapped to his side. "Who's this, Carter?" the man asked, his voice sharp. Ethan raised his hand slightly, stepping forward. "This is Kayla. She's..." He glanced at her, searching for the right words. "It's complicated." Kayla met the newcomer's gaze evenly, refusing to show any sign of intimidation. If these humans wanted to challenge her presence, she was ready. But for now, she would wait and see how Ethan handled the situation. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: by ancient law, their fates were intertwined. The tension in the air was thick as Kayla stood silently, her golden eyes scanning the humans who had gathered around her. They stared back, some with open hostility, others with cautious curiosity. Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Kayla, as if to shield her from their judgmental gazes. His voice was steady but firm as he addressed the group. "She's not here to hurt us," Ethan said, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "It's complicated, but she means no harm." Captain Ryan Brooks, the leader of the human outpost, narrowed his eyes at Ethan. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and an authoritative presence that commanded respect or fear, depending on the situation. Carter, you're telling me this alien just waltzed into our camp without explanation. You expect us to trust her? Kayla bristled at the word alien, though she kept her expression neutral. She understood enough of their language now to know it wasn't meant kindly. Before Ethan could respond, she stepped forward, meeting Brooke's gaze head-on. Her voice was low, but carried a weight that silenced the murmurs among the crowd. I am Kayla Voss, she said, pointing to herself. Then she pointed at Ethan. He caught my spear. By law, I belong to him. The words sounded strange even to her ears when spoken in their tongue, but they were true nonetheless. Brooks raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Belong to him? What does that even mean? Ethan jumped in quickly, trying to diffuse the growing tension. It's part of her culture, a tradition or something. If someone catches a weapon thrown at them, it creates a bond. She's bound by her laws to stay with me. The other humans exchanged uneasy glances. Some muttered under their breath, while others openly scoffed at the idea. One woman, shorter with curly brown hair, crossed her arms and spoke up. So what? You think we're just going to let her wander around here because of some made-up rule? It's not made up. Ethan snapped, surprising even himself with the sharpness of his tone. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Look, I don't fully understand it either, but it's real to her. And she saved my life out there. This revelation quieted the group for a moment. Kayla watched Ethan carefully, noting the determination in his stance. For someone so soft-spoken, he had a surprising amount of fire when pushed too far. It intrigued her. Brooks sighed heavily, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Fine. We'll keep an eye on her. But if anything goes wrong, Carter, you're responsible. With that, the humans began dispersing, though many still shot wary looks at Kayla as they returned to their tasks. Ethan turned to her, offering a small smile. Sorry about that. They're not used to outsiders. Kayla nodded, accepting his apology without comment. She didn't blame them for their suspicion. Her people would have reacted similarly if roles were reversed. Still, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of irritation at being treated like a threat. Over the next few days, Kayla stayed close to Ethan, observing the humans and learning more about their ways. To her surprise, Ethan took it upon themselves to teach her basic English phrases. At first, she found it frustrating. Her own language was precise and elegant, while theirs felt clumsy and inefficient. But Ethan's patience and encouragement slowly won her over. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan handed her a small device. It's a translator, he explained. It'll help you communicate better until you learn more. Kayla examined the device curiously before nodding her thanks. For the first time since arriving, a hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Despite everything, she was beginning to see why fate had brought her here. Days turned into weeks, and Kayla grew more comfortable in the human settlement. Though most of the others remained wary of her, a few began to warm up, especially after witnessing her skill during training exercises. Ethan often joined her, marveling at her precision with a spear and asking questions about her techniques. In return, she asked about Earth, piecing together fragments of its history and culture through his stories. One night, as they sat near a crackling fire, Kayla finally opened up about her own world. Her voice softened as she described her people, their traditions, their struggles, and their connection to the land. She spoke of how their resources were dwindling, forcing clans to fight over scraps of fertile soil. Her golden eyes reflected the flames as she admitted, "We are strong, but strength alone cannot save us." Ethan listened intently, leaning forward. "You sound like you want things to change." Kayla hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Finally, she nodded. "Yes. The old ways. They served us once, but now they hold us back. My father believed change was possible, but many disagreed. After he died, I fought to honor his vision." Her words struck a chord with Ethan. He thought about Earth's own challenges, climate crisis, political divides, and endless wars. Sounds like we're not so different, your people and mine. Kayla smiled faintly, a rare moment of vulnerability. Perhaps. Their conversations deepened over time, each sharing pieces of themselves that neither had expected to reveal. Ethan discovered Kayla's sharp wit and dry humor, which often caught him off guard and made him laugh. Kayla, in turn, found herself fascinated by Ethan's passion for science and his gentle nature. She admired how he saw beauty in the smallest details, a flower, a rock formation, even the patterns stars made in the night sky. One afternoon, as they walked along the edge of the forest, Kayla picked up a smooth stone and tossed it into a nearby stream. The ripples spread outward, catching the sunlight. She glanced at Ethan, who was watching her with a thoughtful expression. "Why do you care so much?" she asked suddenly. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "About what?" "Everything," she replied, gesturing vaguely. "Your work, your planet, even me. Why do you try so hard?" He shrugged, smiling sheepishly. "I guess, because I believe things can get better. Even if it's hard, even if it takes time, I think we owe it to ourselves, and to each other, to try." Kayla fell silent, mulling over his words. For all their differences, Ethan reminded her of her father, someone willing to dream of a brighter future, no matter how impossible it seemed. As they continued walking side by side, a quiet understanding passed between them. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The calm of the settlement was shattered one morning when a scout rushed into the camp, his face pale and breathless. "They're coming," he shouted, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Ethan turned sharply, his heart sinking as he saw the panic spreading among the humans. Kayla stood nearby, her sharp eyes narrowing as she listened to the scout's report. "What do you mean, they're coming?" Captain Brooks demanded, stepping forward with a scowl. The scout pointed toward the horizon, where dark shapes were beginning to emerge from the dense forest. Warriors clad in armor similar to Kayla's marched steadily closer, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. Their leader, a tall figure with jagged scars across his face, raised a hand, signaling his troops to halt just outside the clearing. Kayla stepped forward, her jaw tightening as she recognized the enemy. "This is Malachar," she said quietly, her voice tense. "A rival clan leader. He hates outsiders." Ethan looked at her, his stomach twisting with unease. "Why are they here?" "They think you're invaders," Kayla replied, her golden eyes flicking between the approaching warriors and the nervous humans behind her. "Malachar won't stop until he drives you off, or worse." Brooks clenched his fists, glaring at the enemy forces. "We didn't come here to fight. But if they want a war, they'll get one." "No," Kayla interrupted sharply, turning to face him. "You don't understand. They outnumber us, and they know this land better than you ever will. A direct fight would be suicide." "So what do you suggest?" Brooks snapped, clearly frustrated. "We just roll over and let them take everything." Kayla shook her head, her expression grim. "There's another way, but it will require trust and speed." She glanced at Ethan, who nodded slightly, urging her to continue. Taking a deep breath, she began explaining her plan. The humans would fortify their position using their technology, setting up traps and barriers to slow down the attackers. Meanwhile, Kayla would use her knowledge of combat tactics to guide them, striking strategically to weaken the enemy's advance. The humans exchanged skeptical looks, but Ethan spoke up quickly. "She's our best chance. If we work together, we might stand a chance." Reluctantly, Brooks agreed, barking orders for the others to prepare. As the humans scrambled to set up defenses, Kayla pulled Ethan aside. "This is dangerous," she said, her voice low. "If Malachar finds out I'm helping you, he'll see me as a traitor." Ethan frowned, guilt gnawing at him. "Then stay back. You've already done enough." "No," Kayla cut him off firmly. By your laws and mine, I am bound to protect you. I won't abandon that." Her words struck a chord, and Ethan nodded reluctantly. Together, they joined the others, preparing for the battle ahead. Night fell quickly, cloaking the settlement in darkness. The humans worked tirelessly, reinforcing barricades and setting up tripwires designed to slow the enemy. Kayla moved among them, offering advice on weak points and suggesting adjustments to their defenses. When the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, the silence was broken by the sound of marching feet. Malakar's forces advanced, their weapons gleaming menacingly. Kayla took her place beside Ethan, gripping her spear tightly. Her presence was a comfort, even as the tension in the air grew unbearable. As the attackers reached the edge of the clearing, Malakar raised his weapon, shouting a command in his guttural language. His warriors surged forward, only to trigger the traps laid by the humans. Explosions erupted, sending debris flying and forcing the enemy to retreat momentarily. Cheers rose from the humans, but Kayla remained focused, knowing the fight was far from over. "Now," she shouted, pointing toward a group of warriors attempting to flank the settlement. Ethan and a few others followed her lead, charging forward to meet the threat head-on. Spears clashed with rifles, and the sounds of battle filled the air. Despite the chaos, Kayla moved with precision, her every strike calculated and deadly. She fought not just for herself, but for the fragile bond growing between her and Ethan, and for the hope of a future where their peoples could coexist. The battle raged on, the clearing alive with the clash of weapons and shouts of defiance. Kayla moved like a storm, her spear slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. Every step she took was deliberate. Every strike aimed to disarm or disable rather than kill. She knew these warriors. They were her people, after all. And though they now stood as enemies, she couldn't bring herself to take their lives unnecessarily. Ethan fought beside her, his movements clumsy compared to hers but fueled by determination. He wielded a short blade given to him by one of the human defenders, its weight unfamiliar in his hands. Still, he held his ground, deflecting blows and striking back when he saw an opening. His heart pounded in his chest, not just from the exertion, but from the fear that gripped him each time Kayla darted into danger. At one point, a group of Malakar's warriors broke through the barricades, heading straight for Ethan. Before he could react, Kayla leaped in front of him, her spear flashing as she drove them back. "Stay close," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Ethan nodded, gripping his weapon tighter as he followed her lead. But the enemy wasn't easily deterred. Malakar himself stepped forward, his scared face twisted into a sneer. He pointed at Ethan, shouting something in his harsh language before charging directly at him. Kayla reacted instantly, stepping between them. The two warriors locked eyes, their spears meeting with a sharp clang. For a moment, it was a duel of equals, Kayla's speed and skill against Malakar's brute strength. "You shame your bloodline," Malakar growled in broken English, his voice dripping with contempt. "Helping these invaders. You are no better than them." Kayla didn't respond, her focus entirely on the fight. She feinted left, then spun right, aiming a blow at his side. Malakar blocked it, countering with a swing that forced her to stumble backward. Ethan watched helplessly, torn between wanting to intervene and knowing he'd only get in the way. Just as Malakar raised his spear for a finishing strike, Kayla dropped low, sweeping her leg across the ground to knock him off balance. He fell hard, his weapon slipping from his grasp. In an instant, she was on him, pressing the tip of her spear against his throat. Her golden eyes burned with fury, but there was also a flicker of sorrow. "Leave this place," she commanded, her voice cold and steady, "or I will end you." Malakar glared up at her, hatred etched into every line of his face. But he said nothing, instead rising slowly to his feet and retreating toward his warriors. With a final glare at Ethan, he signaled for his forces to withdraw. The remaining attackers followed, disappearing back into the forest as quickly as they had come. When the last of them was gone, The humans erupted into cheers, relief washing over them like a wave. Ethan leaned against a tree, breathing heavily as the adrenaline began to fade. His hands trembled as he lowered his blade, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Kayla approached him, her armor scratched and dirtied from the fight. She looked exhausted but unharmed, except for a shallow cut along her forearm, where Malakar's spear had grazed her skin. Ethan noticed it immediately, concern flooding his expression. "You're hurt," he said, reaching out instinctively. "It's nothing," Kayla replied, brushing off his worry with a dismissive wave. But when she saw the look in his eyes, she softened slightly. "I've had worse." Ethan shook his head, his voice quiet but firm. "That doesn't mean it doesn't matter." He pulled a small medkit from his belt, offering it to her. "Here, let me help." For a moment, Kayla hesitated, unused to such gestures of care. Then she nodded, allowing him to clean and bandage the wound. As he worked, she studied him closely, noting the way his hands moved carefully, almost reverently. It was strange how much trust had grown between them in such a short time. When he finished, Ethan met her gaze, his expression serious. "Thank you," he said simply. "If you hadn't been here." Kayla interrupted him with a small shake of her head. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. Malakar won't give up so easily." Ethan sighed, knowing she was right. But for now, they were safe and together. That was enough. The days following the battle were quiet, though the tension lingered like a storm cloud waiting to break. Kayla spent much of her time in the medical bay, not because her wound was severe, but because Ethan insisted on keeping an eye on it. She didn't argue, though she found his concern amusing. To her, the cut was minor, a fleeting reminder of the dangers they had faced together. But to Ethan, it symbolized something deeper. The risk she had taken for him. The bond that neither of them could deny any longer. As she sat on a cot, Ethan carefully examined the bandage he had applied earlier. His touch was gentle, almost hesitant, as if afraid he might hurt her further. "How does it feel?" he asked, glancing up at her face. "Fine," Kayla replied, her tone calm but tinged with impatience. "You worry too much." Ethan smiled faintly, setting the supplies aside. "Maybe. But I've seen what happens when people don't take care of themselves." Kayla tilted her head, studying him curiously. "You speak from experience." He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Back on Earth, I lost someone close to me because we didn't act fast enough. A friend. He got sick, and by the time we realized how bad it was," Ethan trailed off, his voice heavy with regret. "I guess I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen again." Kayla watched him silently, her golden eyes softening. For all his determination and bravery, there was a vulnerability to him that she hadn't expected. It made her wonder about the weight he carried, about the losses and mistakes that shaped him into the man sitting before her now. "You're different from my people," she said finally, breaking the silence. "We value strength above all else. Weakness is punished." Ethan frowned, leaning back slightly. "That sounds harsh." "It is," Kayla admitted. "But it keeps us alive. Or it did, once." Her gaze drifted to the floor, her thoughts turning inward. "Lately, I've wondered if survival is worth so much pain." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. Ethan reached out instinctively, placing a hand over hers. The gesture surprised them both, him because it felt natural, and her because it was unexpected. Slowly, Kayla turned her hand over, allowing their fingers to intertwine. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, the barriers between them seemed to fade, leaving only two people connected by trust and shared struggles. Later that evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan joined Kayla outside the settlement. She stood near the edge of the forest, gazing at the stars that dotted the alien sky. He approached quietly, unsure if she wanted company, but she glanced at him and nodded, inviting him to stand beside her. "They're beautiful," Ethan said after a while, pointing at the constellations above them. different from Earth's, but still amazing. Kayla followed his gaze, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. My father used to tell me stories about those stars. He said they held secrets, truths about who we are and where we come from. Do you believe that? Ethan asked, curious. I don't know, Kayla replied honestly. But I like to think there's more out there than just war and loss. Don't you? Ethan nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Yeah, I do. They stood there for a long time, side by side, letting the peacefulness of the night wash over them. For the first time since arriving on this planet, Ethan felt a sense of hope, not just for himself or the humans, but for Kayla and her people too. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. When Kayla finally turned to leave, she paused, looking at him one last time. Thank you, she said softly, her voice barely audible. Then she walked away, leaving Ethan to wonder if she truly understood the depth of what she meant to him, or what he meant to her. News of Kayla's alliance with the humans spread quickly among her people, carried by scouts who had witnessed the battle against Malachar. It wasn't long before a delegation arrived at the edge of the settlement, their presence announced by the rhythmic beating of drums echoing through the forest. Ethan and Kayla stepped forward to meet them, flanked by Captain Brooks and a small group of armed humans. The air was tense, charged with uncertainty, as both sides eyed each other warily. The leader of the delegation was an elder named Torin, his silver hair braided intricately and adorned with beads that marked his status. His expression was stern, his golden eyes scanning the scene with disapproval. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority. Kelavos, he began, pointing a gnarled finger at her. You stand accused of breaking our laws. You have sided with outsiders, desecrating your bloodline. Kayla stood tall, her chin raised defiantly. I have done nothing wrong, she replied, her tone firm. These humans are not invaders. They seek only knowledge and survival, just as we do. Torin's frown deepened. Your loyalty belongs to your people, not to strangers. He gestured toward Ethan, his gaze sharp and accusatory. And yet you fight for him, even risk your life. Why? Kayla hesitated, glancing briefly at Ethan before meeting Torin's eyes. Because he caught my spear, she said simply. By ancient law, I am bound to him. Would you have me break that vow? Murmurs rippled through the delegation, some nodding in reluctant agreement while others scowled. Torin sighed heavily, leaning on his staff. The laws are sacred, yes, but they were meant to preserve our strength, not weaken it. Tell me, Kayla, what future do you see in this alliance? How will it benefit our clans? Ethan stepped forward then, surprising everyone. Though he knew little of their customs, he understood the importance of earning trust. We don't want to take anything from you, he said, addressing Torin directly. We're here to learn, to share what we know. If we work together, we can help each other survive. Your world is dying, but maybe we can fix it, together. The elder studied Ethan carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned back to Kayla. And you believe this human speaks the truth? I do, Kayla answered without hesitation. I've seen his heart. He is honest, and he cares about more than himself. Torin was silent for a long moment, weighing her words. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. We will allow this arrangement. For now. But know this, if these humans betray us, there will be no mercy. Not for them, and not for you. With that, the delegation departed, leaving behind a mix of relief and unease. As the humans returned to their tasks, Ethan pulled Kayla aside, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? That didn't seem easy for you. Kayla shook her head, her shoulders sagging slightly as the weight of the confrontation settled over her. It wasn't, but it had to be done. My people are proud, but they're also scared. Change frightens them. Ethan placed a hand on her arm, offering what comfort he could. You stood up to them. For me. For us. That takes courage. Kayla looked at him, her golden eyes softening. Courage isn't enough. We need action. If we're going to make this work, we have to prove ourselves, to them, and to each other. Over the following days, Ethan and Kayla worked tirelessly to build bridges between their peoples. They organized meetings where humans and Kayla's clan exchanged ideas, sharing tools, techniques, and stories. At first, progress was slow. Suspicion ran deep on both sides, and old prejudices were hard to overcome. But gradually, small victories began to emerge. One breakthrough came when Kayla introduced the humans to a plant native to her world that could purify water far more efficiently than anything they had brought from Earth. In return, Ethan showed her people how to use solar panels to generate energy, a concept that fascinated them. These exchanges sparked curiosity rather than hostility, planting seeds of cooperation where once there had been only distrust. Even so, challenges remained. Some of Kayla's warriors still viewed the humans with disdain, while a few of the settlers openly mocked the aliens' traditions. Tensions flared occasionally, threatening to undo all they had accomplished. Each time, Kayla and Ethan intervened, reminding both groups of the fragile peace they were building. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. Late at night, after the day's work was done, they would sit together beneath the stars, talking quietly about their hopes and fears. Kayla confessed her dreams of uniting her fractured clans under a new vision, one of harmony instead of conflict. Ethan shared his desire to see humanity reach beyond its limits, to become better than it was. "You're changing me," Ethan admitted one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I'd care so much about someone who isn't, well, human." Kayla smiled faintly, resting her hand on his. "And you've changed me too. Maybe that's what this is, a chance for both of us to become something greater." As they gazed at the alien sky, bathed in the light of twin moons, neither could deny the path they were forging was fraught with risks. But for the first time, they faced those risks not alone, but together. Months passed, and the fragile peace between Kayla's people and the humans began to take root. Slowly, the barriers of mistrust started to crumble, replaced by cautious cooperation. The settlement grew busier as the two groups worked side by side, humans teaching technology and farming methods, while Kayla's clan shared their knowledge of the land and its resources. Together, they built irrigation systems, purified water sources, and even planted crops that thrived in the alien soil. Ethan and Kayla were at the heart of it all, their partnership becoming a symbol of what was possible when differences were set aside. They spent long hours coordinating efforts, mediating disputes, and encouraging others to see beyond their fears. Though progress wasn't always smooth, every small success brought them closer to a future where both peoples could coexist. One morning, Ethan stood with Kayla on a hill overlooking the settlement. The sight below was remarkable. Humans and aliens working together, their laughter mingling as tools clinked and machines hummed softly. It was a scene neither of them could have imagined just months ago. Ethan smiled faintly, shaking his head in disbelief. "I never thought I'd see this," he said quietly. "Us and your people, actually getting along." Kayla crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "It's not perfect. There are still those who resist, but it's a start. A good one," Ethan added, glancing at her. "And it's because of you. You've done so much to make this happen." Kayla shrugged modestly, though there was a flicker of pride in her golden eyes. "Not just me. You've fought for this too. Maybe more than anyone." They fell silent for a moment, watching as a group of children, both human and alien, played near the edge of the forest. Their laughter carried on the breeze, a sound that filled Ethan with hope. He turned to Kayla, his voice soft but serious. "Do you think we can keep this going? Really make it last?" Kayla hesitated, her gaze distant. "I don't know. There will always be challenges. Malachar hasn't forgotten us, and some of my people still believe the old ways are the only way. But," she paused, looking at him, "if we keep trying, if we show them that change isn't weakness, its strength. Then maybe we can. Her words reassured him, though he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Still, standing there beside her, he felt a quiet determination settle over him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the days turned into weeks, life in the settlement became almost routine. The humans adapted to the rhythms of the alien world, while callous people grew more comfortable with the strange technologies and ideas the outsiders brought. Trade flourished, with goods and knowledge exchanged freely. Simple friendships formed, bridging gaps that had once seemed insurmountable. But amidst the progress, whispers of doubt lingered. Some of Kayla's warriors grumbled about her closeness to Ethan, questioning whether her loyalty truly lay with her own kind. Others wondered aloud if the humans could ever be trusted completely. Even among the settlers, a few voiced concerns about relying too heavily on the aliens, fearing they might lose their independence. Despite these tensions, Ethan and Kayla refused to let fear dictate their actions. They continued to lead by example, showing through their own relationship that trust could grow even in the unlikeliest places. Late one evening, as they sat near the glowing embers of a fire, Kayla broke the silence. "What happens when your mission ends?" she asked, her tone careful. "Will you leave this world behind?" Ethan stared into the flames, the question catching him off guard. He hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I guess I haven't decided yet." Kayla nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "You'll have to choose someday. Your people or mine." The weight of her words hung between them, heavy and unavoidable. Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other," he said softly. "Maybe there's a third path." Kayla looked at him, her golden eyes searching his face. For a moment, she didn't speak, as if weighing the possibility of such a future. Then she smiled faintly, a spark of hope lighting her features. "Then we'll find it," she said. Together. The suns rose over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold as Ethan and Kayla stood together on a hill overlooking the thriving settlement. The land below was alive with activity, humans and aliens working side by side, laughter and conversation blending into a symphony of unity. It was a sight neither of them had dared to dream of when they first met, yet here it was, real and tangible. Kayla turned to Ethan, her golden eyes soft but serious. "You once asked me if I still wish to be released from the ancient law," she said, her voice steady. "Do you remember?" Ethan nodded, his heart skipping a beat. He remembered the question clearly. It had weighed on him ever since that day in the forest. "Yes," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I remember." Kayla studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she held out her hand, palm up, as if offering him a choice. "If you wish to release me, I will understand. You are not bound by our laws. You owe me nothing." Ethan stared at her hand, then at her face, his mind racing. For so long, their bond had been shaped by circumstance, a spear caught in midair, an ancient tradition neither of them fully understood. But now, standing here with everything they had built between them, he realized something profound. Their connection wasn't just about duty or obligation anymore. It was deeper than that. It was trust, respect, and something else, something he hadn't allowed himself to name until now. He took a deep breath, stepping closer. "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "I don't want to release you. Not because of some law, but because I choose you." Kayla's hand dropped slightly, surprise flickering across her face. "You choose me?" "Yes," Ethan said, his voice growing stronger. "You're mine forever, not because of fate or tradition, but because I want it to be that way. Because of who you are. Because of what we've built together." For a moment, Kayla was silent, her golden eyes searching his face, as if trying to find any hint of doubt. When she found none, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "And you are mine," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet certainty. "Not because of a spear or an oath, but because I choose you too." They stood there for a long time, hands clasped tightly, the world around them fading into the background. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Their differences, the challenges ahead, the whispers of doubt from others. All that mattered was the bond they shared, forged through trials and strengthened by trust. As the morning light bathed the landscape in warmth, they began walking back toward the settlement, side by side. Together, they greeted the people who had come to rely on them, human and alien alike. There were still struggles to face, still bridges to build, but for the first time, they faced them not as two separate beings bound by an ancient law, but as partners united by choice. When they reached the edge of the clearing, a group of children ran up to them, laughing and calling their names. Ethan knelt down, ruffling the hair of a young boy who clung to his leg, while Kayla smiled warmly, answering the eager questions of a curious girl. Watching them, the adults nearby exchanged knowing glances, their expressions softening. These two, once strangers, now inseparable, had become a beacon of hope for everyone. Later that evening, as the twin moons cast their silver glow over the land, Ethan and Kayla sat together beneath the stars. They didn't speak much, words weren't necessary. Instead, they simply leaned against each other, content in the knowledge that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. In the distance, the hum of life continued, the steady rhythm of progress, of unity, of a future slowly taking shape. And in the quiet moments between heartbeats, Ethan and Kayla knew one thing for certain. Their bond was unbreakable. By law, by choice, by destiny, they were forever bound.